Hi, evening all, it's your host Captain.JJ here with something a little bit different this time round. As you've probably already wondered, I am a motorsport fan. I've been following motorsport for the last 25 years, Formula 1 being my main sport which I follow closely by motorcycles, MotoGP, that sort of thing. But yeah, in this case it's we're going to be looking at the British Grand Prix last Sunday and a notable incident which happened between the two championship contenders Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, both driving for Red Bull Racing and Mercedes-AMG respectively. So without further ado, let's have a look and see what happened. Okay, so we're going into the start now. The context here, Max Verstappen won the sprint race from Lewis Hamilton, hence why Max Verstappen got pole position, despite Lewis Hamilton getting pole position in official qualifying. Now in the sprint race, Max Verstappen beat Hamilton off the line. But this time round it was Lewis who got the better start and he hasn't been able to overtake him, but he realises he can't let Max Verstappen chase off into the distance, otherwise it's going to be game over on that one. So that's why he has to go for it. Now he's shown his intent going into the left field section. Max is able to hold him off here, but Lewis is still trying. He's going to go for the cutback manoeuvre. And he's going to try and go for it for Cobbs. And then the inevitable happened. The collision between the two of them occurred and it spat Max Verstappen off at Cobbs' corner. Which is not ideal. It put him out on the spot basically. Yeah, that car is a wreck. And we weren't told to otherwise afterwards that it was a 51G impact. Now 51G is a lot. The G force is times the gravity, so he hit the wall at 51 times the gravity. I think somewhere over 75 is fatal, or might be it's either 75 or 100, or somewhere between that. Anything above that region is fatal. It was a sizable impact, but for what we know is that Max Verstappen got released. He had his medical checks done at the medical centre and then he was taken to hospital in Coventry via helicopter for further precautionary checks. Nothing wrong with him, he was released in the evening of Sunday, so wish Max Verstappen a speedy recovery on that front. He should be fit and well for Hungary. But it's back to the British Grand Prix and let's have another look at what happened. We only get to see the incident on Cobbs, but the incident was set up much further down the line. It was set up going through the farm section on the opening part. Now given what happened yesterday, Max Verstappen led after Lewis Hamilton wasn't able to overtake Max on the first lap. So Lewis changes his tactics. Now he has to go on the aggressive to make sure Max doesn't disappear up the road, which is what has happened in the last few races or so. He gets ahead going down the Wellington straight, but he's unable to get the move because Max Verstappen's got the inside line for that section, so Lewis has to back out on this occasion, but he's not going to give up this fight. So what he does through Luffield, he takes a wider line. He takes the middle of the road, a wider line than Max, in order to cut it off sooner so he can get more speed out of the corner. Charles also takes the middle line, but enough of that. That'll be a little bit later. So with the lower drag setup, this enables Hamilton to get in the slipstream of Max Verstappen. Max knows he's there as we go down the National Straight, which is where the old pit section was from somewhere in the... So, I'm tempted to think in the 60s all the way up to 2010 is when they last used it. That was before the international wing was set up. The only reason this section in 2010 was used was because of the fact that the international wing area had not been constructed. It was still in the middle of construction at that point. But that's an irrelevant fact. Back to the track. Max knows that Lewis is right behind him, so he goes for a defensive line and then Lewis goes up the middle. So let's go look at that again. You see, he's now in the middle. They're both in the middle of the track. But Lewis does something different in comparison to yesterday. Yesterday he went to the outside for the racing line. This time, however, he's going outside, then he cuts back to the inside, Wing Max Verstappen. That gives him the inside line for the corner. Now, this is important. Pay attention to where the Red Bull of Max Verstappen is in comparison to the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. There's not a lot of room there. Leclerc's on the racing line. Max Verstappen is in the middle of that corner, so he's already set himself up for something bad to happen, because at this point, in this stage of the championship, Lewis is not going to back out. And so, you see, the angle is too narrow, and then bang, that's the point of contact. And given this is one of the fastest corners in the championship, Eau Rouge being faster than that, and Pouin, Max is not going to survive that crash unscathed. The impact, you can tell where the impact point was by the fact that the right rear tyre came off the rim. It was rim on rim contact for the two of them, and bang, into the wall. And it was so hard that the camera was destroyed on impact. It was 51G that we were told later by Christian Horner that the point of impact was. I think anything above 75G would be classed as fatal. So Max got off pretty lucky. I think it was badly bruised. He was taken off to the medical centre and then onto Coventry Hospital for further checks, but he got discharged that night. So let's have a look at the incident from the helicopter cam. You see, Lewis dummies Max Verstappen here, and you see at that point, just before turning, Hamilton's more inside. He's more inside. He's not ahead, but he's sufficiently up the inside to claim the corner. He's sufficiently up the inside to let the driver, i.e. Max Verstappen, know he's on the inside. You've got to give him space. And at this point, Lewis can't back out. At where the inside, where Hamilton put the brakes on, contact was inevitable. Based on how hard these two were racing each other, and Max Verstappen's notorious attitude towards racing, being very aggressive, and he's had back out will crash. And they did crash this time round, but it was Max that came off worse. That's just putting it mildly. But fortunately, a human being will recover before the Hungarian Grand Prix. Now, I have seen found footage of that incident, which was somewhere around where the red umbrella is, and that is in real time. What I'm playing at the moment is 0.25 of the video speed, but that's not relevant for the video. It's not relevant for the context of the video. My context here is explaining my viewpoint of Hamilton Verstappen. The other unfortunate thing was that he just missed out. If you look back, he missed out on the tech road barrier by about 5 meters, which would have softened the impact a little bit more. But instead, he got 3 rows of tyres meeting his back end. So here's a viewpoint from Lewis. Here's Mercedes. You see, there was a little feint to the left, which means he's thinking of making Max Verstappen go further on it. Max Verstappen think he's going to go on the outside, which is what happened the day before in the sprint race. But if we play the footage a little bit further on, he then darts right to get the inside line, which puts off Max Verstappen. At this point here, just before we get to the inside, Lewis is alongside. Kind of a little bit, Max is slightly ahead here, but in the vast majority of cases, Lewis is enough up the inside to make his presence known. But at this point, contact is inevitable. And there's the aforementioned contact. It was rim on rim. It's one of those unfortunate things that can happen in racing. And Lewis is able to carry on. Here is his track shot angle. You see, also pay attention to the gap as well. Max himself doesn't leave Lewis a lot of room, and he also doesn't leave himself a lot of room or margin for error. And that is where it comes to bite him. See, there's the point of contact. Would that have happened if he had left a little bit more space? Possibly. But it's also possible that if Verstappen had turned it a little bit later or gone more to the racing line at that point, he might have been able to survive that. He might have been able to carry on the race. Worst case scenario, he would have lost the 7 points for losing the lead, but he would have had a chance to get it back again because Red Bull was the faster car that weekend. But because of his infamous aggression and the inability to concede position when he's lost it, he lost everything in that race. So here's another viewpoint here. Lewis has got the run at this point. See, he's faint left, then he dummies left and then goes to the right. And at that point, and then bang, the inevitable happens. Lewis carries on, even though he did suffer rim damage, and if it wasn't for the red flag period, more than likely he would have had to retire because of the damage. But because of the red flag period, which then followed because of barrier damage and being unable to guarantee that Max's car was safe to touch because some of the sensors went on impact. The safety sensors went on impact, so they were unable to verify whether his car was safe to touch or not. Out of Woodcote onto the national pit straight. Max knows that Lewis is coming about to look in the mirror. He looks again to see right, to see where Max is. And then at that point though, you see that was instinctive there. Max knows that Lewis is going to go right. But this is where the things start to change differently. They're both taking the same amount, give or take, same amount of steering angle. Max though knows that Lewis is there, so he has to turn out, but he does it, if you look, Max knows Lewis is there. He saw his wing. He tries to turn out and then turns again. And that's where the lack of margin for error comes into it for Max. And as a net result, he spits himself into the barrier, and that was it. He's out of it. You know, he spat himself into the barrier, and well, that was it. Right, so now we've got Max Verstappen's damaged Red Bull. Now that's a lot of damage after 51 times the gravity impact with the barrier. Fortunately, Max was only hospitalised for checkups and he got released on the same night, which is good. But that's going to cost Red Bull in the championship in monetary value too because of the budget cap. Mercedes had that problem at the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix with Bottas after the incident with George Russell. My next question was, to that incident, why was Bottas so far down the field for that incident to happen in the first place? But that's a different video. That's for a different video. But in this case, this is Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. Now, the incident occurred because two racing drivers were not willing to give up the place. And given the context of the championship, Max Verstappen being 33 points ahead going into the main race of Silverstone, he gained a 1 point advantage from the sprint race. So, 33 points. That's just over a race win. It's a race win and a fifth, to be pedantic, ahead. So, him going overly aggressive with his defensive driving, which he's notoriously known for, wasn't necessary in this incident. Max Verstappen had more to lose because he had a big lead. The other foot could be said by Hamilton for trying to move, but this was a Lewis Hamilton, I need to fight for the championship, I am not going to back out of it this time, because we've seen previously, say like in Emilia Romagna and Spain, Max Verstappen's gone on the aggressive, and Hamilton's like, well, back out. Back out on this occasion. And in Spain that worked out for him because he allowed the race to come to him and he beat Verstappen on track on strategy. And Emilia Romagna, he put himself in a position where he could fight later on. But this time round though, Lewis had to go for it. against Max Verstappen, because as we saw in the sprint, he wasn't able to get ahead of him, and Max disappeared off into the distance. He wasn't going to let that happen this time around, and as previously explained in the other part, he had to get ahead. And so, while he was trying to overtake, and the incident of the cops, he was like, I'm going up the inside, I'm not backing out. Verstappen was on the outside, was like, I need to keep this lead, and then the two of them were here, then there, bang. Max Verstappen goes off into Cop's corner with a 51G impact, and he's out of the race with a potential chassis write-off. Lewis was able to maintain second, but he had suffered rim damage, and if it weren't for the red flag, which coincidentally was thrown out because of the barrier damage and Max Verstappen's well-being, he would have had to retire. So Hamilton got a 10-second time penalty for that, which is the third most serious penalty that can be given in race. So second or third. I think the first one's a warning, second is 5 seconds time penalty, second one after time penalty after that is 10, then a drive-through penalty, and then a stop-go penalty. Now, time penalties, as we all know, can be served at a pit stop or will be added on to the total race time at the end should that penalty not be served in a pit stop. Drive-through and stop-go penalties are different because they must be served within 3 laps of the notification being shown, or the team being notified by it. They must serve within 3 laps. And if that happened to Lewis, like a drive-through penalty, many people would have been called for, which is, I completely get it. I completely get why people would want a drive-through for it. It would have been served within 3 laps, and Hamilton would have been struggling to get back into contention. 10-second penalty, too harsh. Completely too harsh. 10-second penalties are only used for the most major offences, say failing to slow down under the yellow flags, which is what happened with Kimi Räikkönen in Spa, or entering the pit lane when the pit lane was closed, which is what happened to Hamilton and Giovinazzi last year at Monza. But that penalty wasn't applicable this time around. Now we're going to have to ask ourselves why, from both drivers' perspective, the incident occurred. From Hamilton's perspective, he's 33 points behind and he needs to get ahead of Max Verstappen. So he puts it in a position where Max has to back out or cause a collision. In a similar way that Max Verstappen is putting himself on the middle of the line and then going around aggressively saying to Hamilton, back out or cause a collision. So both of them were putting each other in an uncompromising position, and eventually the two of them collided, which I covered a little bit earlier while I was watching the onboard. So, end of the line, Lewis served his 10-second time penalty, he stopped, he was able to fight his way through by legitimately having the fastest car in the field, and he won the race. Now, give or take, credit for Lewis for bringing that race back to him in the face of adversity. He did have a little bit of heart from Bottas though, which was cooperative, and it needed to be done because ultimately Lewis Hamilton is fighting for the championship at this stage rather than Valtteri Bottas, so completely fair game. And then Charles was, yeah, he got a bit too wide and he got a wiggle one. But Hamilton that time put enough up the inside to allow Charles of his presence. And early in the race, Hamilton managed to pass Lando Norris at exactly the same corner. So, the move was possible. And can be done cleanly. The move was possible. While Max Verstappen, no points. Now this is where we get on, now we're in the controversial part of it. At the end of the race, Hamilton received racial abuse on social media, not on. And I thought Euro 2020 was bad, but let's take it to another level. You don't attack someone who allegedly took out your favourite driver, or a driver you're supporting. You don't do that. Under any circumstances, you do not use racial emotes or anything racial against a sports person of any colour. There's no way. And that's what a lot of people did on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, that sort of, all the social media platforms. Instagram had to remove some of the comments. Don't forget, Instagram is owned by Facebook. So a lot to be said about that. And also falls into the new government legislation regarding internet I think it's some sort of protective legislation of the internet, preventing racial things like that from happening. It's not 100% foolproof, but it's a start. And this was, now this is the controversial part, this was fueled by the fact that Christian Horner said pretty strong remarks about the move at the time, saying that it was a desperate move from Lewis to overtake Max Verstappen and take him out. I can kind of see the viewpoint for the first part, but not the second part. Why would you take someone out of why would you take your main championship contender out if you're risking a big penalty? Why would you do that? Doesn't make sense. Unless, of course, you are a desperate driver in 1997 who wanted to try and take out a French Canadian, but that was a completely different matter altogether. And for context, Villeneuve had the corner. So, that's just, not a good idea. And Helmut Marko, well, both of them are not exactly known for being the most sportsman-like people in the sport, let's be honest. They've got like a cavalier, aggressive, never my fault attitude to the affair. And that has rubbed onto Max. Max Verstappen has a cavalier, aggressive attitude when it comes to on-track, and always not me, it's never my fault sort of attitude of it when something bad has happened to him. Complete bullshit, if you ask me. And you have to bleep that, by the way. So, Hamilton went in aggressive, had to do it, he was in that position, and yeah, we all know what happened. Max Verstappen's side of it though, going into the race, you have a 33-point lead here. You don't necessarily have to win every single race at this point. It's nice if you do, but you don't necessarily have to. You can take the fact that Mercedes can take points off you from race to race, so long as you're playing the long game. Now, the long game here, Max Verstappen, 33-point lead going into the race, doesn't have to be overly aggressive with Hamilton. But he's chosen the aggressive route to keep the Mercedes behind him in order to get in the victory. That I get, but not the aggression. And I think I've read a tweet somewhere by a good friend of mine, and also a former racer herself, say if you've got enough up the inside, you have a right to claim the corner. You've got the right to claim it. I agree. That's the way I was taught. I was like, that is also the way I was taught about racing as well. You've got to, sometimes if you know you can't beat the corner, you've got to hold back, let it come back to you, and then go again. Now, if Max had done that, if he backed out or given Hamilton more room, giving him more space, worst case scenario is that Max Verstappen would have gone off the track at Cops, but he would have been able to continue in the lead or in second place. If he's in the lead, he can carry on with the lead, but he will have more pressure from Hamilton. If he holds up in second, he can hold back knowing he's got the pace to beat Hamilton. But neither of that happened. Instead, Max went full aggressive on Cops, didn't leave Hamilton enough space, and he just spat himself off on the corner and ended up himself in hospital for it. Yeah, not ideal, not good. And to make matters worse, he accused him of unsportsmanlike conduct, but yeah, you're not exactly been the most sportsmanlike either, Max Verstappen, let's be real. I mean, how many times have you moved in the braking zone when trying to prevent drivers from overtaking you and cause collisions for it? Baku in 2018 comes to mind. So, from that perspective, it's a little bit hypocritical. I also know that Lewis is not exactly an angel either when it comes to racing, but he's been through it the hard way. Neither of them are angels regarding this. Both of them have a say in what happened, and both of them have a portion of blame to be accounted for. Lewis had to serve his side of it, But Max Verstappen, aside from the hospital, got off pretty fairly because FIA put the whole blame on Lewis, which I kind of disagree on. Because of what I mentioned earlier. Lewis had enough at the inside line just before the braking area to claim the inside of the corner, and Max Verstappen, being aware of that, should have left a little bit more space than he gave. And it was a gamble for him that basically didn't, well, pay off. Basically didn't pay off for him. So it leads me on to the final viewpoint, was that the racial thing, no go. Do not do that. I know there were some very dissatisfied people regarding it. However, at the same time, some people were, you know, it was bound to happen. I was in the camp of it was bound to happen given the situation of the championship and the way they've been fighting it out. Something had to give. And it did on that day. Max Verstappen came off worse, so hopefully his racecraft will improve a little bit at that point, or he will fall into the trap of it's not my fault, I'm not going to change my style. But if he doesn't change his style, he's going to lose the championship. It's that simple. Lewis has got the momentum now. We're going to Hungary in 2 weeks' time, which is a Lewis favoured track. Max has not won at the Hungaroring in terms of F1. Lewis, since Max has been on it, has won about 4 times, I would say. And prior to Max, he's won there 4 times actually, yeah. 7, 9, 12 and 13, and then after that 16, 18, 19, 20. So yeah, he's won the track 8 times. So this is Lewis favoured. And then we've got the summer break after that, which is where these circles will go forward. Tell you what though, Zandvoort, Max Verstappen territory, that's going to be interesting. I wonder what sort of reception that Lewis is going to get there, and whether the same thing that happened at Silverstone will happen again at Zandvoort. That's something to watch for. In terms of racial abuse, that's not tolerated. And I hope those people who were throwing racist comments, monkey emojis, all those racial emotes, that sort of thing, racial terms, I hope they get banned from social media, but I don't see it happening, and it's a vicious cycle that's going to carry on over and over again until something is eventually done about it. And in terms of the rules, it's the rules haven't essentially changed, it's just that the interpretations have changed. I know that sounds a little bit odd, but the interpretations is how things do. Different stewards have different interpretations of the rules. Now, you may shout about that's not consistent. I agree, it's not consistent. It's a similar thing with the track line limits, which was aforementioned. You know how Imola had one corner, if you went off 4 wheels beyond the white line, you get the lap time deleted. But on another corner, if it was 4 wheels beyond the red line of the Italian flag, which was painted on there, then your lap time is cancelled. One hard rule: if any 4 cars, if any part of the 4, if all 4 wheels are off beyond the white line, lap time should be cancelled. And it's not exactly hard by, if I remember correctly, British karting rules, where it said that any 4 wheels beyond the curb, then you're going to get a track limit warning. And without curbs, it's white line. Yeah, I've rambled on a little bit. Some of it will be edited out. But I hope you enjoyed this perspective. This might not be the only one, depends on reception. But if you did enjoy the video, please leave a like. If you did enjoy the video, leave a like in the video. And if you want to see further videos, you click a video here, you click a video here, here, and here. And if you want to hit the subscribe button, click in the middle of the video. That's it for me. Thank you very much for watching, and see you on the next video. Good night, everybody.